She couldn't walk. She couldn't even move, and after everything she had been through, no one thought she would make it. But then, something extraordinary happened. A miracle, a bond stronger than any pain, and a journey of survival you won't believe. Stay with us because this story will change the way you see hope and resilience forever. Luna wasn't always a street cat. Once, she had a home, or at least that's what she imagined. A warm bed, the scent of food in the air, and a family to love her. But that was a long time ago, before she was left behind in the cold, harsh world of the streets. Abandoned and alone, Luna had to learn how to survive in a place where no one cared, and no one would stop to help. Her journey was one of loneliness, pain, and uncertainty. She had no idea why she had been left behind, no reason why someone would abandon her to such a cruel fate. She spent her days searching for scraps, trying to stay hidden from the chaos of the busy streets. The sounds of honking cars and shouting people filled her world, but none of them seemed to notice her. Luna was just another stray, blending into the background of a city that couldn't care less. Her fur was matted and dirty, her body frail, and her eyes, those eyes once full of life, were now dull with exhaustion and fear. She no longer remembered the joy of being cared for. All that mattered now was survival, and survival was hard. But the hardest part wasn't the hunger or the cold nights spent under parked cars. It was the injury. Luna's hind leg was badly hurt, possibly from a car or a cruel person. She couldn't walk properly anymore, and every step was excruciating. The pain didn't stop her from trying, though. She had to keep moving, searching for a safe spot to rest, hoping that one day, someone would notice her, someone would care enough to help. But as the days dragged on, Luna felt herself growing weaker. Each attempt to walk brought more agony, and the energy she had once relied on to escape danger slowly drained away. As the days turned into weeks, Luna's hope began to fade. She no longer believed she'd find a way out of the streets. The world had forgotten her, and she had learned to live with the constant ache in her leg and the emptiness in her heart. The idea of a home, of love and care, seemed like a dream from another life. But deep down, there was still a tiny spark of hope, a belief that perhaps, just perhaps, someone would find her and change her fate. She had seen so many others go by, walking confidently, looking healthy and loved. But Luna's world was different now. There was no more room for dreams, just the harsh reality of the street. The street had become her only reality. The noise, the people, the danger, it was all she knew. Every now and then, she would see other animals, some stray like her, others with homes. But no one ever stopped to help. They would walk past, their eyes avoiding hers, leaving her in the shadows, forgotten. Luna had learned to accept it. She had no choice. She learned to keep her distance from other animals, knowing they were just as lost and alone as she was. And yet, somewhere in her heart, she still hoped. She had heard of animal rescues, of heroes who would save the forgotten ones, but she had never experienced it herself. She would find shelter in the corners of abandoned buildings or under park benches, never daring to hope for something better. Sometimes she would gaze up at the sky, longing for the warmth of the sun, for a kind hand to offer her comfort. But those days seemed so far behind her now. The cold, rainy nights were endless, and the pain in her leg only made everything worse. The world outside seemed so vast and uncaring, and Luna felt so small and insignificant in it. She just wanted a chance to know what it was like to be loved again. Yet, something deep inside her still yearned for more. The hunger for love, for connection, never truly went away. Luna had spent so many nights dreaming of what it would be like to have someone to care for her, to have a warm place to sleep, to be fed and cherished. But as the days went by, she began to believe it was an impossible dream. The cruel reality of her situation began to settle in. Little did Luna know, however, that her life was about to change forever. She had no idea that her suffering was nearing its end. A chance encounter, something unexpected, was about to alter the course of her life in ways she could never imagine. It was on a dreary afternoon when Luna's fate began to shift. She had dragged herself into a small alley, hoping to find a place to hide from the rain. Her injured leg was throbbing painfully, and her stomach was empty once again. The world around her was muffled, as if she were living in a distant dream. She had nearly given up on the idea of rescue, convinced that no one would ever come for her. But that was when she heard something that would change everything. The sound of a voice, gentle and warm, calling her name. Luna's ears perked up. The voice didn't sound like the usual harsh, indifferent calls she heard from strangers. It was kind, soothing, almost as if it was calling her from a place of understanding. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to capture her attention. The voice belonged to a woman, someone who appeared out of nowhere, as if sent by fate itself. Luna hesitated, instinctively trying to hide deeper into the shadows, but something about this woman felt different. There was a sense of calmness, a tenderness in the air that made her want to trust her. The woman knelt down, her eyes scanning the alley, her heart aching as she noticed Luna. The small, fragile creature, barely able to move, was hiding in the corner, clearly in pain. She approached slowly, giving Luna the space she needed, but her heart swelled with empathy. She knew she couldn't leave this little soul behind. The woman whispered soft words, trying to reassure Luna that everything was going to be okay. She reached out cautiously, as if to offer a lifeline to the terrified cat who had suffered for so long. Luna, though terrified, could feel a spark of something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. It was faint, a flicker in the darkness, but it was enough. Her body trembled from exhaustion and fear, but as the woman's hand came closer, Luna instinctively knew she wasn't a threat. The soft touch that followed was the first gentle contact she had felt in ages. The woman's hand brushed lightly against her matted fur, and for a brief moment, Luna allowed herself to feel comforted. It was as if the weight of the past months, filled with pain and isolation, was momentarily lifted. The woman picked Luna up carefully, her arms wrapping around the fragile cat with a sense of tenderness that was almost unbelievable. Luna's heart raced in her chest, her body frozen with disbelief. Was this real? Was she finally being saved? The woman didn't rush. She cradled Luna gently, whispering words of reassurance as she carried her to the nearby car. Luna could barely comprehend what was happening, but the warmth and care she was receiving felt like something out of a dream. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment when everything changed. As the woman drove Luna to the rescue center, she held her close, feeling the cat's fragile body against hers. The world outside the car seemed so distant now. It was as if Luna's pain, her suffering, was finally starting to fade into the background. Her once dark world was beginning to brighten, and for the first time in so long, Luna allowed herself to rest. She closed her eyes, trusting the woman who had appeared like a miracle in her life. Luna didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of her journey back to health, back to a life filled with love and care. When Luna first arrived at the rescue center, she was barely conscious, exhausted, and terrified. The woman, who had now introduced herself as Sarah, gently placed Luna in a cozy crate lined with soft bedding, her movements slow and deliberate to avoid startling the fragile cat. Luna's eyes fluttered open for a moment, but the world around her was a blur. Sarah stayed close, speaking softly, reassuring her that she was safe. The sound of Sarah's voice, warm and consistent, became a soothing presence, one that Luna began to recognize in the chaos of her new environment. The first few days at the center were filled with care and attention. Sarah would visit Luna every morning and night, always speaking in that same soft, comforting tone. At first, Luna was hesitant to trust. She would shrink away whenever Sarah tried to touch her, her body stiff with fear. But Sarah, understanding the trauma Luna had endured, never pushed her. Instead, she simply sat beside the cage, her presence a silent promise that she would never abandon Luna. Slowly, Luna began to notice that the world wasn't as terrifying as it once seemed. Her pain, though still present, was beginning to ease. Each day, Sarah would gently feed Luna small meals, coaxing her to eat despite the lingering fear. There were moments when Luna would tentatively reach out for the food, her body trembling with hesitation, but Sarah's reassuring smile made it easier for Luna to take that first step. It was a simple act, eating, but for Luna, it was a monumental shift. She had survived for so long without knowing when her next meal would come, and now she had a steady source of food, a constant presence that promised her survival. The more time Sarah spent with Luna, the more the cat's trust began to grow. Sarah would sit by Luna's crate for hours, reading aloud to her, or simply talking to her about her day. Luna would listen, her eyes slowly softening as she became accustomed to Sarah's voice. It wasn't long before Luna, who had once avoided all human contact, began to look forward to Sarah's visits. She would approach the side of the crate, her ears perked and her tail twitching in curiosity. Sarah would reach out with a tentative hand, and Luna would allow her to gently stroke her fur. It was the first real contact Luna had felt in months that didn't feel like a threat. As Luna's health began to improve, so did her confidence. She no longer flinched at every sound or sudden movement. Her body was still recovering, but the change in her demeanor was unmistakable. She started to stretch her legs more, testing her strength, although she still favored her injured leg. With Sarah's patience and care, Luna's trust deepened. She would follow Sarah with her eyes as the woman moved around the room, as if silently saying, "I see you now. I trust you." One evening, after Sarah had fed Luna and cleaned her crate, she sat on the floor next to the cat's bed. Luna, now strong enough, climbed out of the crate and slowly approached her. For the first time, Luna jumped onto Sarah's lap, nuzzling her hand as though to thank her. Sarah gasped softly, overwhelmed by the gesture. Tears welled up in her eyes as she gently petted Luna's soft fur. This moment, so simple yet so profound, marked the turning point in their relationship. Luna had taken a first step toward not only healing physically, but emotionally as well. The bond between Sarah and Luna grew with each passing day. As Luna's confidence grew, she became more playful. She would bat at Sarah's fingers, pounce on toys, and even let out the occasional soft meow. Her once dull eyes now sparkled with life, and her coat began to regain its shine. The transformation was not just physical. Luna was becoming a cat again, the playful, curious creature she had been before the streets had worn her down. The love and care Sarah showed her had given Luna a new sense of hope. She was no longer the broken cat that had wandered the streets, hoping for a miracle. She was becoming her own miracle. Just when things seemed to be going perfectly, when Luna's transformation was on the verge of completion, disaster struck. It started with Luna's leg. Despite all of Sarah's efforts to care for her, Luna's injury wasn't healing as expected. The constant limping had started to affect her mobility more than anyone realized. One morning, Sarah noticed that Luna wasn't moving much at all. Her once playful energy had vanished, and she sat in the corner of the room, staring blankly ahead. Sarah's heart sank. She rushed to check on her, noticing that Luna's leg was swollen and tender. Something was terribly wrong. Sarah immediately took Luna to the vet, her mind racing with worry. She couldn't bear the thought of losing Luna, not after everything they had been through together. The vet's examination confirmed Sarah's worst fears. Luna had an infection that had spread to her bones. The injury, which they had assumed was a simple fracture, was now a much more serious problem. The infection was severe enough that it might require amputation of her leg. Sarah was devastated. Luna had come so far, and now this. How could she possibly go through something like this after everything she had already endured? The decision weighed heavily on Sarah's heart. The thought of Luna losing her leg felt like an impossible choice. It was as if fate was testing their bond. Would Luna be able to survive this next challenge, or would the trauma of losing her leg prove too much for her to overcome? Sarah couldn't bring herself to imagine Luna going through such a painful procedure, but she also couldn't bear the thought of seeing Luna suffer if the infection spread further. It felt like a cruel twist of fate, a final test of their connection. As Sarah prepared for the worst, Luna seemed to sense the tension. She became withdrawn again, retreating into herself, just as she had when she first arrived at the rescue center. The spark in her eyes began to dim, and her trust in Sarah seemed to waver. Luna was scared. She didn't understand why her body was failing her once again, why the promise of a better life was now clouded with pain and fear. Sarah, too, felt helpless. She had fought so hard to give Luna a chance, but now the road ahead seemed uncertain. Would Luna still be the same after such a traumatic surgery? Would they be able to continue their journey together, or would this be the end of their story? The days leading up to the surgery were filled with anxiety and uncertainty. Sarah couldn't sleep. She spent every moment by Luna's side, talking to her, reassuring her that everything would be okay, even though she wasn't sure of that herself. Luna, still withdrawn, would nuzzle Sarah's hand, as though seeking comfort, but she didn't have the same spark in her eyes that she once did. It was as if the weight of the world had settled back on her tiny shoulders. The once vibrant cat was now a shadow of her former self, and Sarah feared that Luna had given up hope. On the morning of the surgery, Sarah held Luna in her arms one last time before the procedure. Tears filled her eyes as she kissed Luna's soft head, whispering words of encouragement. "You're my fighter, Luna. You've already survived so much. You can do this." But deep inside, Sarah felt an overwhelming sadness. It was the first time she truly feared losing Luna. She watched as the veterinary staff took her away, her heart heavy with dread. The days following Luna's surgery were agonizing for Sarah. Each morning, she would anxiously check in with the veterinary clinic, hoping to hear good news. Every moment away from Luna felt like an eternity, and each phone call held a mix of hope and fear. Sarah had been through so much with Luna, but she couldn't help but wonder if they would ever return to the life they had imagined together. The doctors had been optimistic, but the road to recovery was far from guaranteed. The infection had been severe, and there were still risks. The thought of Luna waking up alone without her leg filled Sarah with a sorrow she couldn't fully explain. Then the call came. It was the vet, and Sarah could hear the relief in their voice as they spoke. "Luna's doing much better than we expected. The surgery was a success. She's awake, and she's been surprisingly strong." Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she heard the words she had longed for. Luna was going to be okay. She wasn't out of the woods yet, but she had made it through. The road ahead would be long, but Luna had survived the worst of it. Sarah couldn't help but cry with relief, tears streaming down her face as she whispered into the phone, "Thank you." When Sarah went to pick Luna up, the sight of her was overwhelming. Luna was still recovering, her small body wrapped in bandages, but her spirit was unmistakable. She looked up at Sarah with wide eyes, the same trust and warmth shining through, despite the pain she was in. There was a quiet strength in Luna's gaze now, one that seemed to say, "I'm not giving up." It was a look that Sarah would never forget. As she lifted Luna into her arms, she could feel the connection between them stronger than ever. Luna had fought so hard to survive, and now, Sarah was determined to help her heal. In the weeks that followed, Luna's progress was nothing short of miraculous. She adapted to her new way of life with a resilience that inspired everyone around her. At first, she struggled to move with her missing leg, but Sarah was patient, always encouraging Luna to take small steps. It was slow, but each day Luna grew stronger, regaining her mobility and confidence. It wasn't long before she was running and playing again, albeit with a slightly different gait. The bond between Luna and Sarah had only deepened through this experience, and the love they shared was a testament to their perseverance. Luna's transformation wasn't just physical, it was emotional. The once timid and fearful cat, who had withdrawn from the world, now welcomed it with open paws. She would follow Sarah around the house, curling up beside her in bed or napping on her lap. Their relationship had evolved from a simple rescue to something deeper, more profound. Luna was no longer just a cat that had been saved. She was a hero in her own right. She had overcome the unimaginable and emerged stronger, both physically and emotionally. And Sarah, who had taken on the role of rescuer, had been changed just as much by Luna as Luna had been by her. One day, as Luna lay contentedly on Sarah's lap, purring softly, Sarah smiled, her heart full. Luna had survived against all odds, and now they had a future together. There were still challenges ahead, but Sarah knew that together they could face anything. The transformation that had begun in that alley when Sarah first found Luna had come full circle. It was a journey of healing, of trust, and of love. And now Luna was not just a survivor, she was thriving, a true testament to the power of resilience, care, and the miracle of second chances. As Sarah looked at Luna, now happily bounding around the house, her heart swelled with pride. This was the cat who had once been broken, abandoned, and alone. But now she was whole again. She was a symbol of hope, of survival, and of the extraordinary bond that can form when a human and an animal choose to fight together for a better life. Their story was far from over. It had only just begun. Luna's journey is one of survival, resilience, and the kind of love that changes everything. She came from a place of pain and hopelessness, but today, she's a living testament to the power of second chances. Her story is a reminder that no matter how broken we may feel, there's always hope for healing, for transformation, and for a future brighter than we ever imagined. If Luna's story touched your heart, then you know that every rescue animal has a story worth telling. A story of overcoming the odds, of finding a family, and of discovering the strength to keep going. We can all be part of that miracle. Whether it's through adoption, support, or simply sharing these stories, we can help create more happy endings, just like Luna's. Thank you for being part of Luna's journey. If you believe in the power of rescue, the magic of transformation, and the miracles that happen when we choose love, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss another heartwarming story like this one.